ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. Beloved Sangat, we have gathered here today not as individuals but as a Sath Sangat. You are the company of the holy, the company of truth, a community of seekers, and that in itself is a remarkable and beautiful thing. Because when we come together not out of duty but out of a shared longing for truth, something magical happens. It's as if we become waves of the same ocean, moving together, rising and falling, yet never separate from the vastness we call the divine. And so, beloved Sangat, let's begin. Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Ang 349, Rag Asa, Guru Nanak Dev Ji. If a beggar cries out at the door, the master hears it in his mansion. Whether he receives him or pushes him away, it is the gift of the Lord's greatness. Recognize the Lord's light within all, and do not consider social class or status. There are no classes or castes in the world hereafter. Beloved Sangat, imagine, if you will, that existence is like a vast ocean, and each of us, from beggar to king, is but a wave rising and falling upon its surface. The beggar calling out at the door, and the master in his mansion, both are but fleeting ripples in this great cosmic dance. The ocean does not judge one wave as high and another as low. It simply expresses itself in infinite forms. So too, beloved, the Lord, this eternal, unfathomable presence, hears all, sees all, not from a position of preference, but from a place beyond preference. Whether one is received with open arms or turned away, it is not a matter of reward or punishment, but the unfolding of a deeper mystery, a play of divine forces beyond our grasp. We, in our human way, love to divide, to categorize rich and poor, high and low, worthy and unworthy. But these are illusions of the mind, social fictions we have invented. Scripture here reminds us, in the realm beyond this fleeting world, there are no such distinctions. When the body is shed and the illusion of separateness dissolves, what remains is the light, the same light within all things, within all beings. So, to truly see is to recognize this light everywhere, to bow not before titles and riches, but before the sacred essence that animates all life. For in the grand game of existence, we are not isolated players, but reflections of the same divine presence, experiencing itself in a billion forms. And when we realize this, when we truly understand that all divisions are but mirages, we laugh. Because at last, we have remembered that we have always known there is no other. There is only this. So let's go a little deeper into this, shall we? You see, beloved, we often move through life believing in a certain structure, a hierarchy, a world of distinctions. This person is rich, that one is poor, this one is noble, that one is lowly. And we cling to these distinctions as though they are real, as though they are something more than just social agreements, conventions that we take far too seriously. But if we look closely, we begin to see that these boundaries are not fixed. They are not written into the very fabric of the cosmos. They are merely part of a game we have invented. Now, beloved, Guruji is offering us a profound insight. When a beggar cries at the door, the Master hears it in his mansion. The Lord, this great boundless intelligence that pervades all things, knows of both the beggar and the Master, for he is neither partial nor indifferent. He simply is, and in his vastness he allows all things to be as they are. The beggar's cry, the Master's wealth, both are movements within the same great symphony of existence. But here is where it gets interesting. The scripture doesn't say the Lord hears the rich more than the poor, or that he rewards one and punishes the other. No. It tells us that whether he receives or rejects, it's simply the unfolding of his greatness. And this is where we must step beyond our usual way of thinking. Because what we normally do is impose human morality onto the divine. We assume that being accepted is good, being rejected is bad. But that's just the ego talking. That's just us playing the game of winners and losers. Divine wisdom here is inviting us to drop this illusion entirely. It is saying, look deeper. See the Lord's light in all things. Stop categorizing people by their status or their labels, because in the end, when the curtain falls, when this great theatre of life dissolves, there are no classes, no castes, no high, no low. Now, if we borrow an analogy from nature, because nature, after all, is the best teacher, imagine a tree. Its roots are deep in the ground, and its branches stretch towards the sky. Some leaves are high, some are low. But does the tree itself make any distinction between them? Does it say, oh, this leaf is superior because it's closer to the sky, and this one is inferior because it's nearer to the earth? Of course not. The tree simply grows, allowing all its parts to exist as they are. And so, this is the deeper lesson. We are all part of the same great tree of life, beloved Sangat. Some of us may appear as beggars, others as masters, but these are just fleeting roles in a play that is much grander than we can imagine. When we cling to these roles, we forget the fundamental truth, that beyond the illusion of separateness, there is only the one, manifesting in countless forms, playing an infinite game with itself. So what happens when we truly see this? When we stop measuring people by their wealth, their class, their position in society? We wake up. We see the cosmic joke. We realize that we were never separate, never divided, never higher or lower in the first place. And in that moment of recognition, a deep laughter arises, because at last we understand. We were never beggars, we were never masters, we were always the light. So now that's where it truly gets fascinating. Because once we grasp this, that the beggar and the master are just temporary ripples in the vast ocean of being, another question arises. If all distinctions are an illusion, then what are we supposed to do? How do we live? And this is where most people get a little stuck. Because you see, the mind wants an instruction manual, a clear rule book that says, do this, don't do that, be like this, avoid that. But the great paradox is that once you've seen through the illusion of separateness, there is no rule book left. There never was. So does this mean that we do nothing? That we sit around in some mystical haze, repeating to ourselves, all is one, all is one, while the world goes on? Not at all, Sangat. In fact, quite the opposite. Because when we realize that all forms of life are expressions of the same great energy, that the divine's light shines equally in all beings, something remarkable happens. Compassion, genuine compassion, arises naturally. Not because we feel obligated to be good, not because some external morality tells us we should, but because we see that helping another is, in a very real way, helping ourselves. The hand does not ignore the foot when it is injured. It moves to soothe it, because they are part of the same body. So now we come back to the beggar at the door. How do we respond? Well, the old way of thinking would say, well, if all is one, then nothing really matters, so why bother helping? But that's missing the point entirely. The new way of seeing, the awakened way, realizes this beggar is not separate from me. This is life calling to itself. This is the divine appearing in the form of need. And so the response is not a calculation, not an act of charity for charity's sake, but an effortless expression of love. Just as a river does not think about flowing, it simply flows, you see? Now Guruji says, recognize the Lord's light within all. This is not just a poetic statement. It is a call to direct perception. Can you look at the face of another human being, whether rich or poor, beautiful or ugly, kind or cruel, and see not just a person, but the divine itself peering through their eyes? Can you recognize that the same force that beats your heart is also beating in them? Because when you do, the illusion of separateness fades, and life becomes a kind of play. What Hindus call Leela, the divine game. You start to act, but your actions are no longer driven by fear or greed or status. They are simply the spontaneous gestures of life itself, moving effortlessly through you. And in that moment, you are free. Free from the burden of judgment, free from the weight of should and shouldn't, free from the whole exhausting project of trying to be somebody. Because at last, you see, that you were never somebody to begin with. Just a wave in the ocean, just a note in the grand symphony of being. So the question is not, what should I do? But rather, can I see? Can I recognize the divine's light in everything, in everyone, and simply let that recognition guide me? And if you can, well then, the whole game changes. Then you are no longer a beggar seeking meaning, nor a master hoarding wisdom. You are simply life, awake to itself, flowing effortlessly, laughing the joy of its own play. And so, beloved Sangat, let's step back for a moment, take a deep breath, and really feel what we've been talking about today. Because, you see, we have covered quite a lot. The illusion of separateness, the beggar and the master, the great cosmic dance in which all distinctions fade away. But there's always more, isn't there? There's always another layer, another angle from which to peek at this marvelous mystery we call existence. And perhaps the best question to ask now is this: why do we find it so difficult to see? Why is it that we hear these truths, the ones spoken by sages, mystics and poets for thousands of years, and yet they slip through our fingers like water? Why do we keep falling back into this illusion that we are separate, isolated little beings, struggling and striving in a world of opposites? The answer, of course, is that we have been trained, conditioned to see the world in a certain way. From the moment we are born, we are given labels. This is you. That is not you. This is good. That is bad. This is success. That is failure. We are handed a mental map, a framework for reality, and we cling to it desperately because we think it keeps us safe. But here's the secret. The map is not the territory. The world we see is not the world as it is. It is the world as we have been taught to see it. And so we look at a beggar and think, how unfortunate. He has failed at life. And we look at a wealthy man in a mansion and say, what a success. He has won. But these are just ideas, arbitrary distinctions we impose upon the raw, wild, pulsating reality of existence. Guruji is inviting us to wake up from this hypnosis, to step outside the rigid boundaries of our thinking and see directly, to recognize that divine is not somewhere else, not in the heavens, not locked away in scriptures, not in a future paradise, but right here in the eyes of a stranger, in the cry of a beggar, in the laughter of a child, in the beating of your own heart. And once we see this, once we really see it, not just as a nice idea, but as something as obvious as the sun in the sky, everything changes. The world, which once seemed like a battlefield of competing interests, becomes a dance. We stop feeling that life is something happening to us, and we start realizing that we are life, expressing itself in infinite ways. Now you might ask, well, if all is one and all distinctions are an illusion, what's the point of anything? And this is where the real fun begins, because the point is play. Think of music. The point of music is not to get the last note out as quickly as possible. The point is to dance, the rhythm, the sheer joy of the unfolding moment. In the same way, life is not a problem to be solved, a race to be won, or a puzzle to be completed. Life is a symphony, a great unfolding, a spontaneous explosion of beauty and chaos and laughter and sorrow and light. And once you see this, really see it, you stop clinging. You stop grasping at life, trying to control it, trying to force it into some rigid mold. Instead, you flow with it, like a river, like the wind, like a child spinning in the grass with no reason at all. And in that moment, you are free. And so the beggar cries out, the Master hears, and the Lord remains ever present in all things. The game goes on, the music plays, the dance continues. And the only question left to ask is, are you dancing? And so, beloved Sangat, here we are, full circle, back to where we started, only to realize that we never really left. The beggar and the Master, the Lord's light in all things, the illusion of separateness, the grand cosmic play, these are not just ideas, but invitations to wake up, to step out of the small self and into the vastness of what is. Because of the great secret, the one hidden in plain sight, is that there was never anything to seek, never anything to attain. You were never outside the dance, never apart from the music. The waves rise, the waves fall, but the ocean remains. And so the only thing left to do, the only thing there ever was to do, is to smile, to laugh, and to play your part in this great unfolding with a light heart and an open hand, knowing that you were never separate, never lost, and never alone. Beloved Sangat, if I have stumbled in my words or misstepped in my expression, I ask for your forgiveness. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.